The night was heavy with silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl. In the middle of a dimly lit funeral parlor, a coffin rested at the center of the room. Candles flickered against the walls, their weak flames dancing like they were mocking the life that was about to be buried alive. Inside that coffin was Sophia, a young woman carrying her husband's child. She was not dead. She was breathing. She was terrified, and she was trapped. Her hands scratched desperately against the wooden lid, her fingernails breaking as she tried to claw her way out. Her muffled cries for help were swallowed by the soundproof walls. No one would hear her. No one was supposed to. Standing just a few feet away was her husband, David. His expression was cold, detached, like this was just another business transaction. By his side stood Monica, his lover, smirking as though she had already won the prize. The two of them looked down at the coffin like it was a problem they had finally solved. "This is the only way," David whispered, his voice low but steady. "Once she's gone, everything will be ours." Monica leaned closer, her hand sliding down his arm. "She was weak, David. She was nothing but a burden. With her out of the picture, we can live the life we deserve." Inside the coffin, Sophia's body trembled as tears streamed down her face. The baby inside her belly kicked, as if fighting for its own survival. She tried to scream, but her voice cracked, too faint to break through the thick wood above her. She could hear faint footsteps circling, the sound of her husband's shoes tapping against the polished floor. He was walking away. He was leaving her there to die. The betrayal cut deeper than the coffin's walls ever could. This was the man she had loved, the man she had given everything to. She had sacrificed her youth, her dreams, her body for his child, and now, because of another woman, he had chosen to bury her alive. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it would explode. Darkness began to press in around her, suffocating her lungs with every shallow breath. She thought of her mother's face, of the life she had once dreamed of the nursery she had been preparing for her baby. None of it mattered now. She was going to die, alone, abandoned, unloved. But fate has a cruel way of twisting even the darkest of moments. Just as Sophia felt her strength slipping away, just as she thought her final breath would escape her lips, something shifted. The coffin creaked. Air leaked in through a tiny crack. A faint sound, almost too small to believe, reached her ears. It was the sound of a key turning. Someone else was in the room. Someone was about to open the coffin. But was this a savior or another enemy waiting to finish what David started? Before the night of betrayal, before the coffin and the suffocating darkness, Sophia's life had looked very different. She was 27, a quiet and hardworking woman who never asked for much. She had grown up in a modest home, the daughter of a school teacher and a factory worker. From a young age, she learned the value of sacrifice. Her mother taught her patience, her father taught her resilience, and together, they molded a daughter who carried kindness in her heart and strength in her spirit. Sophia never dreamed of wealth or luxury. All she wanted was love, a family of her own, and a husband who would cherish her. When she met David, she believed she had found that dream. He was charming, ambitious, and spoke words that made her believe in forever. Against her parents' cautious warnings, she chose him. She thought she was stepping into a future filled with security and devotion. At first, married life was simple but happy. She worked as an office assistant, spending her evenings cooking meals and waiting for David to come home. She smiled when he complimented her cooking, blushed when he kissed her forehead, and believed his promises when he said he was working late for their future. When she discovered she was pregnant, her joy overflowed. She imagined tiny footsteps echoing in their hallway, bedtime stories whispered in the dark, and laughter filling their small apartment. But slowly cracks began to form. David grew distant. His eyes no longer lit up when he looked at her. He stopped asking about her day, stopped holding her hand in public, stopped noticing the way her belly grew with their child. The late nights at work became excuses. The whispered phone calls in the bathroom became secrets. Sophia felt the shift in her bones, but she refused to believe it. She convinced herself he was simply stressed, that once the baby arrived, he would return to her, to them. She endured the loneliness quietly. She smiled at neighbors who congratulated her on the pregnancy, hiding the ache in her chest. She folded baby clothes late into the night, her tears dripping onto the tiny fabric. Every kick from inside her belly reminded her she had to stay strong, not for herself, but for the child who depended on her. Still, doubt gnawed at her. She noticed perfume on his shirt that wasn't hers. She smelled the faint trace of wine on his lips when he claimed he had been working overtime. One night, when he turned away from her in bed, she placed her hand on her stomach and whispered to her unborn baby, "It's okay. Even if no one else stays, I'll never leave you." Her words were a promise she intended to keep. Yet fate had already begun its cruel game. The love she clung to was a mask, and behind it was betrayal darker than she could imagine. And soon, Sophia would discover that the man she trusted with her life was preparing to take it away. Sophia's world before the tragedy was painted in two contrasting shades: the small, ordinary life she built with her own hands, and the larger, glittering life David constantly chased. Their apartment was modest, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, where children played on sidewalks and neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles. The walls were thin, the paint faded, but to Sophia, it was home. She decorated it with hand-stitched curtains, small family photos, and a baby crib she saved months to buy. Each corner carried her touch, her effort, her quiet dream of building a warm nest for her family. Yet David rarely noticed those details. His mind was elsewhere, absorbed by the corporate world, where appearances mattered more than loyalty. He worked in a prestigious investment firm, surrounded by expensive suits, glittering offices, and colleagues who measured success by the cars they drove and the vacations they flaunted online. Whenever David returned home, his briefcase still smelled of cigar smoke and imported cologne, a stark contrast to the simple scent of soup Sophia had kept warm on the stove. Sophia spent her mornings walking to the nearby market, her hands cradling her growing belly while she greeted vendors who offered her fresh vegetables and kind words. The market women always asked, "How many months now, Sophia?" She would smile softly and reply, "Almost 7, her voice laced with pride and anticipation. She held on to those moments because they were the only reminders that life could still be gentle, even when her heart felt lonely. In the evenings, when David wasn't home, Sophia would sit by the crib, running her fingers across the smooth wooden bars. She imagined holding her baby there, singing lullabies her mother once sang to her. She dreamed of the baby's first laugh, the first step, the first word. But her joy was always clouded by the emptiness of the chair across the table, the silence of meals eaten alone. The main stage of her story, however, was not only that small apartment, it was also David's world, the towering skyscraper where he worked late nights, the luxurious restaurants where he dined without her, the hidden places where Monica's perfume lingered on his skin. Sophia never stepped into those glamorous spaces, yet their presence haunted her home. She felt them in the distance, as though the life David wanted was pulling him further away, leaving her trapped in a bubble of sacrifice he no longer valued. The contrast grew sharper with each passing day. Sophia's world was filled with soft blankets, lullabies, and the smell of fresh bread. David's world was filled with ambition, temptation, and betrayal waiting to unfold. Two worlds that once promised to merge into one family now stood on opposite sides, colliding silently in the background of Sophia's fragile happiness. And in the middle of it all, in the space between her love and his lies, a storm was quietly forming, one that would soon shatter the fragile home she had worked so hard to protect. Sophia had no idea that her safe little apartment was about to become the doorway to her darkest nightmare. David was 32, polished on the outside, but hollow on the inside. To the world, he was the perfect image of a successful man: sharp suits, confident smiles, and an aura of ambition that made people trust him too quickly. But behind closed doors, David was consumed by greed, vanity, and a restless hunger for more wealth, more status, more attention. The simple joys of family life that once made him smile no longer mattered. He wanted a life that sparkled, and if that meant destroying the woman who had once trusted him with everything, so be it. At the center of his downfall stood Monica. She was 29, strikingly beautiful, with eyes that could charm and a voice that dripped with calculated sweetness. But her beauty hid a venomous nature. Monica had grown up learning to survive by using people, mastering the art of manipulation to climb higher and higher. When she met David at a company event, she saw not a man, but an opportunity. She read his weaknesses the way others read a book. His ego, his dissatisfaction, his craving for validation, and she exploited every one of them. Monica knew exactly what David wanted to hear. She told him he deserved better, that his wife Sophia was plain, ordinary, and unworthy of standing beside a man with his potential. She whispered dreams of luxury, of freedom, of a glamorous life where they could rule together without the burden of responsibility. David, intoxicated by her attention, let her words sink into his bones until he believed them. The more time he spent with Monica, the colder he became toward Sophia. He no longer saw the gentle woman who had sacrificed her own dreams to support him. Instead, he saw a shadow, a chain holding him back from the life Monica promised. His resentment grew, fueled by Monica's poisonous encouragement, until it twisted into something far more dangerous than neglect. Together, David and Monica formed a toxic alliance. She fed his ego, he gave her access to the wealth and lifestyle she craved. But it wasn't enough for them to be together in secret. Monica wanted Sophia gone completely. Her ambition was ruthless. She didn't just want David's love. She wanted his name, his fortune, his entire life. And David, blinded by lust and greed, was willing to hand it to her. Their whispers in dark corners turned into plans. Their late-night meetings became strategies. Slowly, they shaped a scheme so cruel that even the devil might have shuddered. To rid themselves of Sophia and her unborn child, they decided on a method that was as shocking as it was final. Not a divorce, not abandonment, death. What made their betrayal even more chilling was how easily they justified it. To them, Sophia was expendable, a woman too meek to fight back, too naive to suspect the danger closing in around her. In their eyes, she was already gone, nothing more than an obstacle standing in the way of their glittering fantasy. And, with every secret meeting, every stolen kiss, they tightened the noose around Sophia's life, until only one terrifying plan remained. The poison in Monica's words did not strike David all at once. It was a slow infection, creeping through his mind day by day, until her voice became louder than his own conscience. At first, he resisted. Divorce was an option, he said. He could simply leave Sophia. But Monica's eyes narrowed, her lips curving into that dangerous smile he both feared and adored. Divorce? She whispered, brushing her hand against his chest. Do you know what that would cost you? Half your assets, your reputation, the sympathy she'll earn as a pregnant victim. No, David. Divorce makes her stronger. We can't give her that. David frowned, the weight of her words sinking in. Monica leaned closer, her voice dropping to a venomous murmur. You need to think bigger. You need to think final. If she's gone, truly gone, no one will question you, no one will know, and everything, your freedom, your wealth, your life with me, will finally belong to us. It was the first time the word death settled between them, and David shuddered. He wasn't a killer. He told himself that. But Monica's grip on his weakness was unrelenting. She painted Sophia not as a wife, not as a mother-to-be, but as a burden chaining him to mediocrity. She'll ruin you, David, Monica hissed one night. If you let her live, she'll drag you down until you're nothing. Is that what you want? Her words echoed like a curse. Soon, David began to see Sophia not as his partner, but as his enemy. Every time she smiled softly at him, every time she spoke of their unborn child, it only deepened his resentment. Monica was the fire in his veins, pushing him forward, urging him to do the unthinkable. And then came her plan, so twisted it sounded almost impossible. Monica suggested they stage Sophia's death as if it were fate itself. Not a murder in plain sight, not an accident too easily questioned, but something theatrical, unforgettable, and irreversible. A coffin, she said one evening, her eyes gleaming under the restaurant lights. Imagine it. She's inside, no one suspects a thing. People will believe she passed away suddenly. A weak heart, stress from pregnancy, it's believable. By the time anyone realizes the truth, it will be too late. She'll be gone, and we'll be free. David sat back in shock, his glass of wine trembling in his hand. The image was grotesque, unthinkable. And yet, the more he imagined it, the more it twisted into something that made sense. No messy investigation, no suspicion. Just a silent, suffocating end that left him and Monica untouched. Monica pressed her hand over his and whispered, "You're not killing her, you're saving yourself." It was the final nail in Sophia's coffin. Planned not by fate, but by the two people she trusted least. The scheme was set in motion. All they needed was the right night, the right place, and the right excuse to lure Sophia into her own grave. And while Sophia prepared for motherhood, they were preparing her funeral. Darkness. That was the first thing Sophia felt when her eyes fluttered open. Not the soft darkness of night, but a crushing, suffocating black that pressed against her from every side. She tried to sit up, but her forehead slammed into something hard and unyielding. Panic shot through her veins. Her hands stretched upward and met wood, smooth, cold, and terrifyingly close. She was in a box. At first, her mind refused to accept it. Maybe it was a nightmare, some twisted dream born out of exhaustion. But the stale air that scraped her lungs, the overwhelming stillness, the scent of varnished wood. It was real. She was trapped inside a coffin. Her heart pounded so violently it hurt. She pressed her palms against the lid, pushing with all the strength she could summon. Nothing moved. She screamed, her voice hoarse, muffled by the wood surrounding her. No one answered. The sound of her own desperation bounced back at her, swallowed by the silence. Sweat poured down her face as she clawed at the lid, her fingernails splintering, blood smearing across the smooth surface. She could feel the baby inside her kicking, reacting to her terror. Tears burned her eyes. "Please," she sobbed into the darkness, her voice cracking. "Somebody help me! My baby, please!" But there was no one, only her own cries echoing back, a cruel reminder of her helplessness. As minutes dragged into an eternity, her breaths grew shallow. Every gasp felt like fire tearing through her lungs. The coffin seemed to shrink, pressing tighter and tighter, squeezing the life out of her. She thought of her mother, of the nursery she had prepared, of the future that had once seemed so bright. Was this how it would end? Buried alive, abandoned, with her child never given the chance to see the world? Her mind spiraled between terror and denial. How could David do this to her? The man she had loved, the father of her child, the one she had trusted with every part of herself. How could he leave her here to die? She wanted to hate him, but her heart was too broken even for hatred. All she could feel was the raw ache of betrayal. Her body grew weaker, her limbs heavy, her chest burning for air. The silence around her was absolute, crushing her spirit as much as her body. For a moment she closed her eyes and let the darkness take her, whispering a silent goodbye to her baby. Then, creak. Her eyes shot open, a faint shift. A sliver of air kissed her cheek. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The lid moved. Someone was on the other side. Hope surged through her veins, clashing violently with fear. Was it rescue, or was it David, returning to make sure she never escaped? She pressed her trembling hands upward, whispering with the last of her strength, "Please, save me." And as the lid began to rise, Sophia's fate hung in the balance, caught between salvation and the final strike of betrayal. The lid groaned as it shifted, and for a terrifying second Sophia thought her mind was playing tricks on her. She blinked through the blur of tears, her chest heaving with shallow, desperate breaths. Then a stream of cool air brushed against her face. It was real. The coffin was opening. Light stabbed her eyes, faint but enough to make her squint after the suffocating darkness. A shadow hovered above her, the outline of a man. His hands gripped the wooden lid, pulling it open with effort. Sophia flinched, terrified it might be David, returning to watch her die. But then she heard a voice, deep, urgent, trembling with something that sounded like fear and pity. "Stay still, I've got you." Her body went limp with shock. It wasn't David. This voice carried no cruelty, no coldness. Hands reached for her, strong yet careful, sliding beneath her trembling arms to lift her out. Sophia's weak body collapsed against his chest, her sobs muffled by the stranger's shirt. The scent of cologne mixed with sweat filled her senses, and for the first time that night, she felt a flicker of safety. The man carried her swiftly through a back corridor of the funeral parlor, away from the room of death that had nearly become her grave. Sophia struggled to find her voice. Who are you?" she whispered, her lips trembling. He glanced down at her, his jaw tight. "It doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you're alive. We can't stay here." Her mind spun. Alive. The word echoed inside her like a fragile miracle. She had been moments away from suffocation, moments away from losing not just her life but her baby's. Yet here she was, held in the arms of a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. Every step he took echoed in the empty hallway. a haunting reminder of the danger that still lurked. What if David discovered she was gone? What if Monica realized their plan had failed? Fear clawed at Sophia's heart even as relief coursed through her veins. Finally, they reached the back exit. The cool night air hit her face, shocking her lungs back to life. She gasped, clutching her belly as her baby stirred inside her. The man set her down gently against a wall, his eyes scanning the shadows around them. "You need to get far away from here," he said firmly. "They won't stop until you're out of their reach." Sophia's voice cracked as she asked, "Why? Why would you help me? Who sent you?" The man hesitated, his gaze darkening. For a moment, it seemed he carried secrets too heavy to reveal. Then he simply said, "Let's just say I couldn't watch an innocent woman and her child buried alive." Sophia's heart raced. Questions swirled in her mind, but exhaustion overwhelmed her. She leaned against the wall, tears streaming freely. She was alive, but barely. And though this mysterious rescuer had saved her tonight, she knew the nightmare was far from over. Because somewhere nearby, David and Monica still believed their plan had succeeded. And soon, they would learn their greatest mistake was leaving Sophia alive. The night wind carried Sophia away from the coffin, but it could not free her from the crushing weight inside her chest. Her rescuer had left her in the care of a discreet nurse in a small clinic far from the city. For hours she drifted in and out of consciousness, her body weak, her mind tangled in fragments of horror. When she finally opened her eyes, the room was quiet except for the ticking of an old clock. The faint smell of disinfectant filled her nose. A nurse hovered at her bedside, her face etched with concern. Sophia tried to sit up, but a sharp pain cut through her stomach. She gasped, clutching at her belly instinctively. The nurse placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Don't move too quickly. You've been through a terrible shock." Sophia's voice cracked as the words tumbled out. "My baby? Is my baby okay?" The silence that followed was louder than any scream. The nurse's eyes lowered and her lips pressed into a thin line. Sophia's heart dropped. "No," Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible. "No, please don't say it." The nurse's voice was soft, trembling with sympathy. "I'm so sorry. The trauma, the lack of oxygen, the baby couldn't survive." The world shattered. A sound tore from Sophia's throat, half scream, half sob, as she collapsed back onto the bed. Her arms wrapped around her stomach as if trying to hold on to the life that had already slipped away. She shook violently, her tears soaking the thin hospital sheets. Her baby, the tiny heartbeat she had cherished, the little kicks that had kept her company in her loneliest nights, the future she had clung to when David's love began to fade. It was gone, all gone. She wept until her voice gave out, until her body trembled with exhaustion. The nurse stayed beside her, offering tissues, water, comfort, but nothing could fill the hollow that had opened inside her. Every breath felt like a betrayal to the child she had lost. In the blur of grief, Sophia's mind replayed the nightmare. David's cold eyes, Monica's smirk, the suffocating coffin, the baby's last desperate kicks inside her womb. The truth struck her like lightning. They had not only tried to kill her, they had killed her child. Her grief twisted into something darker. Anger, hatred, a burning fire that pushed through her chest and seared her tears dry. David had taken everything from her, her trust, her safety, her love, and now her child. Monica had smiled while plotting her death, stripping away the very future she lived for. Lying in that hospital bed, Sophia felt herself break in two. The old Sophia, the quiet, patient woman who endured in silence, died with her baby that night. What rose from the ashes was someone new, someone harder, someone who would never again allow herself to be powerless. And as her tears dried on her pillow, Sophia made a silent vow. David and Monica would pay, no matter how long it took. The days after the clinic felt like walking through a graveyard of broken dreams. Sophia wandered the streets with no destination, her body weak, her spirit fractured. The world around her carried on as if nothing had changed. Children laughed in playgrounds, couples strolled hand in hand. But to Sophia, everything looked gray, hollow, meaningless. She wrapped her coat tightly around her thin frame, though the cold she felt came not from the autumn air, but from the emptiness inside her. She had no child to hold, no husband to lean on, no future that made sense. All she carried was grief heavy enough to crush her soul. With trembling steps, she finally decided to go back to the one place she thought might still offer her shelter: David's family home. Perhaps his parents, her in-laws, would take pity on her. They had always smiled at her politely, had always spoken kindly enough, though never with warmth. But she told herself that surely, after everything, they would open their doors. She was their son's wife. She had just lost their grandchild. Surely they wouldn't turn her away. She arrived at the grand house, its tall gates gleaming under the afternoon sun. Taking a shaky breath, she rang the bell. Moments later, the heavy door opened, and David's mother stood there, her arms crossed, her eyes cold. "Sophia," the woman said flatly, not even pretending to be surprised. "You're supposed to be gone." The words sliced through Sophia like a knife. She staggered, her lips trembling. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking, "I have nowhere else to go. I lost the baby. I just need a place to stay." But David's mother's face hardened further. "You bring shame with you. Do you think I don't know what happened? Do you think we want the scandal of your pitiful tragedy staining this family's name? My son has moved on. You should too." Sophia's eyes widened in disbelief. "Moved on? He tried to kill me. He and Monica." "Enough," the woman snapped, her voice like a whip. "Whatever happened between you and David is none of our concern. You were never truly one of us. Now leave before I call security." The door slammed in her face. Sophia stood frozen, her body shaking, her tears streaming uncontrollably. The rejection cut deeper than any coffin lid, deeper than any betrayal. She wasn't just abandoned by David, she was erased by the very family she thought she had joined. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the cold stone steps, sobbing into her hands. People passing by glanced at her, some with pity, others with indifference. But no one stopped. No one reached out a hand. She was invisible to the world, discarded like trash. For hours she sat there, numb, her tears eventually drying into silent emptiness. When she finally stood, the sun had set and the street lights flickered on. She turned away from the house that had once symbolized security and walked into the darkness, utterly alone. But deep inside that loneliness, a seed of something new began to stir, rage waiting to rise. Sophia's body moved through the city like a shadow. She wandered with no clear direction, the soles of her shoes worn thin from days of walking aimlessly. She hadn't eaten properly in what felt like forever. Her cheeks were pale, her eyes swollen from endless tears. She carried nothing but a small bag and the unbearable weight of betrayal. That evening, rain began to fall, cold and relentless, soaking her coat within minutes. She found herself near a busy business district where glass towers touched the clouds. Men and women in suits hurried past, their umbrellas shielding them from the storm. Sophia had no umbrella. She pressed herself against a wall, shivering, feeling more invisible than ever. Her knees finally gave out. She sank to the pavement, curling into herself as raindrops beat down on her face. For a moment, she almost wished the storm would wash her away completely. That was when a black car slowed beside her. The door opened, and a tall man stepped out. His presence was commanding, even in the chaos of the rain. He wore a dark suit, though drops of water clung to his shoulders. His sharp eyes scanned the pitiful figure on the ground. "Sophia." "Miss," his voice was deep, steady, carrying authority. "Are you all right?" Sophia tried to answer, but her throat was too dry, her lips trembling. She managed only a whisper. "Please, don't leave me here." Without hesitation, the man bent down, sliding his arm beneath her fragile frame and lifting her as if she weighed nothing. She felt the warmth of his embrace against the cold rain, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel completely abandoned. He carried her into the car. The interior smelled of leather and faint cologne, warm compared to the storm outside. The driver glanced back but said nothing, as if used to his employer's unexpected decisions. The man pulled a blanket from the seat and wrapped it around her. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Sophia," she murmured, her eyes avoiding his. He studied her for a moment, noticing the bruises of exhaustion on her face, the despair in her eyes. Something about her struck him, not just her fragile state, but the quiet strength buried beneath her brokenness. "My name is James," he finally said. "I'm taking you somewhere safe." James, she had heard that name before. A CEO known in the city for his wealth, his power, his ruthless reputation in business. Yet in that moment, he didn't look ruthless. He looked Human. Concern flickered in his eyes, a kind of empathy she hadn't seen in anyone for so long. Sophia leaned back against the seat, clutching the blanket tighter. For the first time since the coffin, she felt a sliver of safety. Still, doubt lingered in her chest. Why would a powerful man like him bother with someone like her? But fate had its ways. This meeting was no accident, because James carried scars of betrayal too, and soon, Sophia would learn he was the ally she never knew she needed. The warmth of the car and the steady hum of the engine gave Sophia a strange sense of calm. Wrapped in the blanket, she glanced sideways at James. He sat upright, his gaze fixed on the rain-smeared window. There was something about him. Strength, discipline, but also a heaviness in his eyes that mirrored her own. After a long silence, James spoke, his voice low. "You don't need to tell me what happened to you. Not yet. But I want you to know, I understand more than you think." Sophia frowned faintly, unsure what he meant. James leaned back, his jaw tightening as if he were pulling memories from a place he rarely allowed himself to visit. 5 years ago, he began, I thought I had everything, a wife who smiled at me every morning, a company I had built with my own hands, a future that seemed untouchable. He paused, his hands clasping together. But what I didn't see was the betrayal growing right under my roof. Sophia's breath caught. The word betrayal felt like a dagger because it was the very wound still bleeding inside her. James continued, his eyes dark. My wife, she wasn't content with loyalty. She found comfort in another man. My business partner, someone I trusted like a brother. Together, they conspired against me. While she warmed his bed, he stole from my company, nearly driving it into ruin. Sophia's eyes widened. The story was too close, too raw. James didn't just know betrayal, he had lived it. When I found out, he said, his voice growing colder, I didn't just lose my wife. I lost half of my employees, half of my reputation, nearly everything I worked for. But the worst part wasn't the money or the scandal. It was the look in her eyes when I confronted her. No guilt, no shame, just disdain, as if I was the fool for believing in her. The weight of his words hung heavy in the car. Sophia felt her chest tighten, her own memories flashing, David's coldness, Monica's smirk, the coffin. Their stories were different, but the wound was the same. Love turned into poison. James turned to her then, his eyes meeting hers. You see, Sophia, betrayal doesn't just break you once. It follows you, day after day, until you decide to fight back. That's the only way to silence it. For a moment, Sophia couldn't speak. She wanted to cry, not just for herself, but for him. This powerful man, feared in boardrooms, had known the same helplessness, the same knife in the back. And yet, here he was, still standing. A spark flickered inside her chest. If he could survive, maybe, just maybe, so could she. James's voice softened. I don't know your story yet, but I can see it in your eyes. Someone tried to destroy you, but you're still here. And as long as you're breathing, you are not finished. Sophia's tears slid silently down her cheeks. She had thought she was utterly alone in her suffering. But now, sitting beside James, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Understanding. And in that shared pain, the foundation of an unexpected alliance was born. The following weeks became a blur of quiet healing. James had taken Sophia into one of his private estates, a secluded house on the outskirts of the city, far from the glittering towers where David and Monica flaunted their stolen happiness. The place was peaceful, surrounded by tall trees and open skies, a sanctuary she never expected to find. At first, Sophia resisted comfort. She was still broken, still haunted by the coffin, the loss of her child, the rejection from David's family. Nights were the hardest. She would wake up drenched in sweat, her hands clutching her stomach, her ears ringing with phantom cries that would never come. Each time, James was there. He never asked questions, never pressed her to speak before she was ready. Instead, he sat nearby, silent, his steady presence a reminder that she was no longer alone. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the curtains, James placed a cup of tea in front of her. His voice was calm but firm. You can't live in shadows forever, Sophia. You've been through hell, but you're still here. That means something. You survived for a reason. Sophia stared at him, her eyes tired. A reason? I lost everything. My child, my marriage, my place in this world. What reason could there be? James leaned closer, his gaze unflinching. The reason is simple. You're not finished yet. The people who tried to bury you think they've won. But you're alive. That makes you dangerous to them. The only question is, will you stay broken or will you rise? His words struck something deep within her. For weeks, she had seen herself only as a victim, a woman discarded and forgotten. But the fire of anger she had felt in the hospital returned, faint but real. She clenched her hands, feeling the weight of his challenge. From that day on, James began guiding her. He wasn't gentle in the way one might expect. He pushed her, challenged her, demanded strength she didn't think she had. He had her read books on business, on leadership, on resilience. He brought her into his company's offices, at first quietly, letting her observe meetings from the shadows. Slowly, she began to understand the world David had always kept from her, the world of power, negotiation, and strategy. James also worked on her confidence. He arranged for her to meet stylists, not to transform her into someone fake, but to remind her of the woman she could be. When she stood before the mirror in elegant clothes for the first time, Sophia barely recognized herself. The timid wife who once cooked dinners alone was gone. In her place stood a woman with sharp eyes and a quiet strength. Every step was painful, every lesson heavy. But with each passing day, Sophia felt her broken pieces begin to realign. She was no longer just surviving, she was preparing. And as James watched her transformation, he knew the day would come when Sophia would no longer hide. She would confront David and Monica face to face. While Sophia was quietly rebuilding herself under James's watch, David and Monica lived as if they had already won. To them, Sophia was nothing but a shadow of the past, buried in silence, erased from their future. Their world glittered with champagne toasts, shopping sprees, and whispered promises of a life without limits. Monica had moved into David's penthouse, her clothes scattered across the walk-in closet where Sophia's belongings had once been. She paraded in silk gowns, diamonds glinting at her throat, her laughter echoing against the marble walls. Every corner of the home that Sophia had once dreamed of sharing with her husband now smelled of Monica's perfume. David indulged her every whim. Lavish dinners at the city's most exclusive restaurants, vacations abroad where cameras couldn't follow. He boasted about his freedom, about how light his life felt now that the burden was gone. He never mentioned Sophia's name, not once, as if by erasing her existence from his lips he could erase her from memory. One evening, as they dined on a rooftop under the glow of city lights, Monica leaned across the table, her red lips curling into a satisfied smile. "It's over, David. She's gone. We don't ever have to look back." David raised his glass, his expression smug. "To us. To the life we deserve." They clinked glasses, drinking to their cruelty. But behind Monica's glimmering eyes lay more than satisfaction. She wanted control. She wanted more than David's affection. She wanted his empire. Slowly, she began weaving herself deeper into his business dealings, offering suggestions, whispering strategies. He mistook her ambition for devotion, never realizing she saw him as a stepping stone, just as she once saw Sophia as an obstacle. At the same time, gossip spread quietly in their social circles. Whispers of Sophia's tragic death, though no official details were ever made public. Some questioned the sudden disappearance, but David brushed it off with charm, telling half-truths about illness, about complications in pregnancy. His lies slid easily from his tongue, convincing enough to silence curiosity. Monica played the grieving act perfectly when needed, dabbing her eyes at the right moments, painting herself as the supportive partner who had helped David through loss. Together, they built an illusion so convincing that even their closest acquaintances believed it. Their cruelty was hidden beneath luxury, their crime dressed in gold. They walked hand in hand through galas, smiled for photographs, and accepted congratulations on their new chapter. But beneath their triumph, cracks were already forming. Monica's hunger for more grew insatiable, and David's arrogance blinded him to the danger in trusting her completely. They believed they had destroyed Sophia. They believed she was nothing more than a ghost they had buried. What they didn't know was that ghosts sometimes return, not to haunt, but to destroy. And while David and Monica celebrated their false victory, Sophia was preparing to step back into their world, stronger than ever, ready to turn their illusion into ashes. The night of Sophia's return was not chosen by chance. James had been preparing her for weeks, guiding her through lessons in composure, in business, in the art of commanding a room without speaking a word. She had shed the timid woman who once wept alone in an empty apartment. Now, every step she took carried purpose. The occasion was a gala, one of the city's most prestigious events, a gathering of CEOs, investors, and socialites. It was also an event David was set to attend, parading Monica on his arm like the trophy he believed she was. The perfect stage for Sophia's reappearance. She arrived in a sleek black car, the kind that announced power before the door even opened. When she stepped out, the crowd turned. Gone was the fragile woman with swollen eyes and trembling hands. In her place stood a vision of strength. Sophia wore a floor-length gown of midnight blue, its elegance understated yet commanding. Her hair cascaded in waves, her makeup highlighting sharp cheekbones and eyes that now carried steel instead of sorrow. For a moment, the crowd did not recognize her. Then whispers spread like wildfire. "Is that Sophia? I thought she was gone. Impossible. She looks different." Cameras clicked, flashes lit the night, and every whisper only fed her silent power. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers glittered above tables dressed in gold. David laughed loudly at one corner, Monica clinging to his arm in a gown that sparkled with sequins. They basked in the attention, unaware of the storm about to hit. Then the music shifted as Sophia entered. Heads turned, conversations halted. Even the servers carrying champagne slowed to stare. She walked with steady grace, each step echoing louder than the orchestra. David froze when he saw her. The color drained from his face, his smug grin collapsing into shock. Monica's eyes widened, her hand tightening on David's arm like a vice. For the first time in their charmed lives, they looked like prey. Sophia did not rush toward them. She didn't need to. She let the silence speak, let their panic betray them in front of everyone. She greeted a few influential guests along the way, her voice calm, her smile soft but unshakable. Each gesture reminded David and Monica that she was no ghost. She was flesh, blood, and stronger than ever. When she finally stood across from them, she tilted her head slightly, her eyes locked on David's. No words were exchanged, but the message was clear. "I survived, and you should be afraid." Monica forced a brittle laugh, whispering something into David's ear, but her eyes darted nervously around the room. David's hands twitched, his confident facade cracking. Sophia turned away gracefully, leaving them to drown in their terror. She didn't need a scene, not yet. Tonight was not about revenge. Tonight was about revelation. The city had seen her alive, stronger, radiant. The illusion David and Monica had built was collapsing in real time. And as Sophia disappeared into the crowd, David realized his biggest mistake. He hadn't buried his wife. He had awakened his worst enemy. The gala had ended, but David couldn't shake the image of Sophia walking into the ballroom alive, glowing, and untouchable. All night, he felt eyes on him, some curious, some suspicious. The whispers followed him like shadows. Didn't his wife die? How is she here? What is going on? His empire of lies had cracked, and panic gnawed at his chest. Unable to bear the tension, he slipped away from Monica and stormed into the quiet hallway behind the ballroom. His fists clenched, his breath ragged. That was when he heard the click of heels echoing in the silence. Slow, measured, purposeful. Sophia stepped out from the shadows. For a moment, David's breath caught in his throat. She looked even more terrifying up close, not because she was angry or hysterical, but because she was calm. Too calm. Her eyes no longer pleaded for love or begged for answers. They burned with quiet steel, sharp enough to cut him without a single word. "Hello, David," she said softly, her tone steady. "Surprised to see me?" His jaw tightened. How are you here? You were..." He cut himself off, realizing his own words betrayed him. "Dead?" Sophia finished for him, her lips curving into the faintest smile. "That was the plan, wasn't it?" David stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't know what you're talking about. You shouldn't be here. You..." "Stop lying," she interrupted, her voice firm. "You and Monica tried to bury me alive. You thought I wouldn't survive, but I did. And now I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me, was it worth it? Was her love worth murdering your wife and your child?" Her words struck him like a blade. David's face twisted, torn between rage and fear. He tried to compose himself, to regain the charm that had fooled so many. "Sophia, you're confused. You were sick, delusional. Monica and I only wanted what was best." She laughed bitterly, the sound cutting through the hall. "Best for who?" For you, for her, while I suffocated in a coffin, you toasted to your new life. While I lost our baby, you handed her diamonds. David's mask cracked completely. His eyes flickered with panic. If you say any of this publicly, no one will believe you. It's your word against mine. Sophia stepped closer until she was only inches from him. He could see the fire in her eyes, the strength he thought he had crushed. You're wrong. People will believe me, and when they do, they'll see you for what you are. A coward, a liar, and a murderer. For the first time, David felt powerless. The woman he had buried was standing before him, fearless, her voice steady, her presence undeniable. He couldn't intimidate her anymore. He couldn't silence her. Sophia leaned in, her whisper colder than ice. You tried to bury me, David, but you forgot. I am not dirt, I am fire, and I'm coming for everything you thought you stole. David froze, his heart pounding with a fear he had never known, because for the first time he realized Sophia wasn't his victim anymore. She was his reckoning. After the confrontation, Sophia knew words alone would never be enough. David was powerful, connected, and skilled at twisting the truth. If she wanted to destroy him and Monica, she would need more than anger. She would need proof. Solid, undeniable evidence that would expose their crimes and leave them with nowhere to hide. That night, in the safety of James's estate, she told him everything. For the first time, she spoke every detail. The coffin, the suffocation, the baby she lost, the rejection from David's family. Her voice broke, but her determination never wavered. James listened in silence, his expression darkening with every word. When she finally finished, he leaned forward, his tone steady and resolute. Then we'll gather what we need. Evidence is power, and once you have it, they won't be able to breathe without the world knowing what they did. With James's resources, the plan began. He assigned a team of discreet investigators, people loyal only to him, to dig into David and Monica's every move. Private accounts, hidden meetings, financial records, nothing was off limits. Weeks turned into a tense rhythm of waiting and discovery. Sophia accompanied James to his office, where she watched evidence slowly pile up like bricks, building a fortress. Secret photographs showed David and Monica meeting in dimly lit hotels long before Sophia's supposed death. Bank transfers revealed money David had siphoned from his company into hidden accounts, funds used to finance Monica's extravagant lifestyle. And then came the most damning piece. A security camera recording from the funeral parlor, capturing David's figure hovering over the coffin, his hand pressing against the lid. Sophia's stomach turned when she saw it, her nails digging into the armrest of the chair. Proof, undeniable proof that he had tried to bury her alive. James placed a steady hand over hers. This is enough to ruin him. But if you want, we can gather more. We can expose not just what he did to you, but every crime he's ever hidden. Sophia nodded, her eyes burning with determination. I don't just want him ruined, James. I want the world to see him the way I saw him in that coffin. Cold, heartless, and unforgivable. So they pressed further. James's team uncovered Monica's role in the conspiracy, text messages laced with venom, her own handwriting in notes that outlined the plan to stage Sophia's death. The more Sophia read, the more she realized Monica had not only manipulated David, but relished every detail of her suffering. One evening, as Sophia held the thick file of evidence in her hands, she felt a strange mixture of pain and power. These pages represented her darkest nightmares, but they were also her weapon, her shield, her voice. James studied her with quiet respect. When you're ready, we'll strike. But know this, Sophia, once we unleash this, there's no going back. Sophia looked up, her voice firm. Good. I don't want to go back. I want justice. And with every document, every photo, every recording, Sophia's revenge took shape. Not as a dream, but as a storm that would soon crash down on David and Monica. The night of the gala arrived, and the air buzzed with anticipation. It was the city's most prestigious charity event, a gathering where every powerful figure, politicians, CEOs, socialites, paraded their wealth and influence. Cameras flashed at the entrance, reporters clamored for interviews, and whispers of alliances floated through the grand ballroom. Sophia had been preparing for this moment for weeks. With James by her side, she stepped out of the car, and the world seemed to stop. Her gown shimmered under the lights, her posture unshakable, her eyes cold yet radiant. She looked like royalty, untouchable, and for the first time in her life, she felt the power of commanding a room, not by pleading, but by owning it. James walked beside her, his hand resting lightly at her back, a silent show of support. Their arrival sent ripples of shock through the crowd. Whispers erupted instantly. "Isn't that Sophia? But I thought she was dead. What's she doing here with James of all people?" Across the room, David nearly dropped his glass when he saw her. Monica's nails dug into his arm, her smile faltering as panic flickered across her face. They hadn't just lost control, they had lost their carefully built illusion. The master of ceremonies welcomed the guests, the chandeliers casting golden light over the hall. Music swelled, laughter echoed, and conversations buzzed. But underneath it all, tension thickened like smoke. Sophia could feel David's eyes burning into her, could almost taste his fear. When the time came for speeches, James was invited to the stage. He was a respected name, admired for his wealth and philanthropy, so no one questioned his presence. But what no one expected was what he carried with him. Truth wrapped in iron. "Tonight," James began, his voice smooth yet commanding, "we celebrate generosity and honor. But generosity means nothing if we turn a blind eye to injustice." The crowd hushed. His words were not the usual flattering speech. He gestured toward Sophia, who now stood in the spotlight, calm and unyielding. "Many of you know this woman, or rather you think you do. You heard rumors, lies, that she was gone, but the truth is far darker." Gasps rippled through the room. Sophia stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor. With a steady hand, she held up the file of evidence James's team had gathered. The screen behind them lit up with images, documents, messages, each one a dagger of truth. Photographs of David and Monica together. Bank transfers. The damning footage from the funeral parlor. Each revelation hit like thunder, and the crowd erupted in disbelief, outrage, and whispers of betrayal. David lunged forward, his face twisted in desperation. "She's lying. This is all fabricated." But his words fell flat against the flood of evidence flashing across the screen. Monica's face drained of color, her carefully constructed mask shattering in front of everyone. Sophia's voice finally cut through the chaos, calm, sharp, unforgiving. "You tried to bury me. You stole my child. You thought I would disappear. But tonight, the world sees you for what you really are." And as the room erupted, David realized there was no coffin deep enough to bury the truth Sophia had unleashed. Chaos swept through the ballroom like wildfire. Guests rose from their seats, voices clashing in disbelief. Phones were pulled out, recording every second of David and Monica's humiliation. The screen behind Sophia continued to display damning evidence. Bank records, text messages, the chilling footage of David pressing the coffin lid. The truth was undeniable. David's face turned crimson as he shouted above the noise. "This is a setup. She's lying. She's trying to ruin me because she couldn't handle our marriage ending." But no one believed him. The evidence spoke louder than his trembling voice. A senator's wife gasped from her table. "I knew something was off about him." Another guest whispered, "Imagine burying your own pregnant wife. He's a monster." Monica's mask of elegance shattered completely. She clutched David's arm, her voice high-pitched and frantic. "Say something. Fix this." But David had no fix. The cameras flashed, capturing his every stammer, his every bead of sweat. He looked smaller than ever, his carefully polished image disintegrating in front of the very people whose approval he craved. Sophia didn't flinch. She stood in the center of it all, her presence unshakable, her silence more powerful than their screams. When she finally spoke, her words cut through the chaos like a blade. "You tried to erase me. You stole my child. You thought no one would ever hear the truth. But tonight, everyone has." The room erupted again, this time with gasps and murmurs of sympathy directed at her. In an instant, she transformed from the forgotten wife into the wronged woman who had clawed her way back from the grave. Public opinion shifted like a tide, and it crashed hard against David and Monica. Security moved in, alerted by James's silent nod. They weren't there to remove Sophia. They were there to shield her as the storm closed in on her enemies. Reporters outside had already caught wind of the scandal. By morning, headlines would plaster David's name across every newspaper and screen. "Businessman exposed in wife's near-death plot." Desperate, David turned on Monica. "This is your fault. You pushed me into this." Monica recoiled, her eyes narrowing. Don't you dare put this on me. You agreed to everything. You were weak. You're the one who ruined it." Their alliance collapsed in real time, venom spilling from their lips as they blamed each other. Guests watched in horror, some shaking their heads, others recording gleefully. The glamorous couple who once dazzled society now tore each other apart like rabid animals. Sophia stepped closer, her eyes cold. "You deserve each other, and you'll destroy each other. But first, you'll answer for what you did to me." David lunged forward as if to silence her. But two security guards restrained him. Monica shrieked, her voice cracking, her eyes darting wildly as she realized there was no escape. Their empire, their illusion, their carefully crafted lies, it all crumbled in one night. And as the crowd's judgment rained down on them, David and Monica weren't just disgraced. They were finished. By the morning after the gala, David's empire was in ruins. The news spread faster than fire, every headline screaming his name in disgrace. Businessman plots to bury pregnant wife alive. David Marshall and Mistress Monica exposed in shocking scandal. The media feasted on every detail, replaying the damning footage again and again. His face was everywhere, not as a respected figure, but as a monster. His company's board wasted no time. In an emergency meeting, shareholders stripped him of his position. Clients withdrew contracts, terrified of being linked to his name. Banks froze his accounts pending investigation. Overnight, the man who once boasted about power and wealth became a pariah. His phone buzzed endlessly, but it wasn't loyalty calling. It was lawyers, debt collectors, and enemies circling like vultures. David sat in his penthouse, surrounded by shattered glass from the vase he had hurled at the wall. His once pristine home was a wreck, just like him. Monica paced the room, her nerves unraveling with each passing hour. "You promised me everything," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "You said we'd be untouchable." David glared at her, his eyes bloodshot. "You pushed me into this. You wanted her gone. You wanted it all." Monica's laugh was hollow, bitter. "And you were stupid enough to listen. Do you think I would have ever risked my life for you? I used you, David. You were never more than a means to an end." The words sliced through what little pride he had left. For the first time, David saw Monica for what she truly was, a predator who devoured without remorse. His anger boiled, but before he could lash out, Monica grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. "I'm not sinking with you," she hissed. "You're finished, and I won't be dragged down by a failure." The slam of the door echoed through the hollow apartment, leaving David alone in silence. He had lost his company, his fortune, his lover. The city outside buzzed with whispers of his downfall, but inside, he was nothing more than a broken man, pacing through the ruins of his arrogance. Monica, meanwhile, found no salvation in leaving him. Her name was already tied to the scandal. Reporters hounded her every step, cameras flashing as they called her the Mistress who plotted murder. Once invited to the most exclusive parties, she was now shut out, doors slammed in her face. The diamonds she flaunted were suddenly worthless, symbols of her greed and betrayal. In desperation, she reached out to old friends, but none answered. She was toxic, abandoned by the very circle she once manipulated. Alone in a hotel room stripped of glamour, Monica stared at her reflection, smudged makeup, hollow eyes, a woman who had climbed by stepping on others, only to fall harder than she ever imagined. David lost everything he built. Monica lost the illusion she lived for. Together they were nothing but ashes of a fire they had lit themselves. And while they drowned in disgrace, Sophia stood tall, finally free of their shadows, ready to claim her new life. The storm had passed. David and Monica had destroyed themselves, consumed by their own greed and betrayal. Their downfall was splashed across every newspaper, their names cursed in every social circle. For Sophia, it was the justice she had once thought impossible. But justice alone was not enough. She needed healing. She needed to learn how to live again. James stayed by her side through it all. He never pushed, never demanded more than she was ready to give. Instead, he offered her the two things she had been denied for so long: safety and respect. Slowly, Sophia began to breathe again without fear, to laugh without guilt, to see the world not as a place of shadows but of possibility. One afternoon, months after the gala, Sophia stood on the balcony of James's estate, the sun warming her face. Below her stretched gardens filled with color, life blooming in every direction. She closed her eyes and felt the breeze against her skin, a gentle reminder that she was alive, not just surviving but living. James joined her, placing a cup of tea in her hands. "You look different," he said softly. Sophia smiled faintly. "Different how?" "Stronger," he replied, "like someone who knows her worth." His words touched something deep within her. She had once believed her worth was tied to being a wife, to sacrificing for someone who didn't value her. But now she knew better. Her worth was in her resilience, in her ability to rise from the ashes of betrayal and stand taller than ever. Over time, her bond with James grew into something neither of them had expected. They were not two broken people clinging to each other. They were survivors, equals, building something new out of respect and trust. James never tried to erase her scars. He honored them, just as she honored his. Together they found not just companionship, but love. When Sophia finally agreed to marry him, it wasn't out of desperation or need. It was a choice. A choice to embrace a man who saw her as his equal, not his possession. Their wedding was small, intimate, surrounded by only those who truly cared for them. No pretense, no lies, just a celebration of survival and new beginnings. As she walked down the aisle, Sophia carried with her the memory of the child she had lost, the pain that had once defined her. But instead of breaking her, it gave her strength. She vowed never to forget, never to let her story be buried like she once almost was. Her life was a testament that even in the face of betrayal and loss, a woman could rise, rebuild, and reclaim everything stolen from her. That night, standing with James under the stars, Sophia whispered a promise to herself: "I will never be silenced again." And as her laughter echoed across the gardens, Sophia's story closed not in tragedy, but in triumph. A reminder to every woman watching that no betrayal, no cruelty, no coffin could bury the strength of a woman who chooses to rise. So, my dear friends, the story has now come to a close. And if you're still here, listening all the way to this very moment, then I believe something in Sophia's journey has touched your heart. Maybe it's her pain, maybe it's her courage, or maybe it's the reminder that no matter how dark life feels, we are never truly finished until we decide to give up. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Sophia chose to rise, and so can we. Betrayal, loss, heartbreak, they don't define us. What defines us is the strength we gather afterward. So if this story moved you, let's carry its message into our lives. Never let cruelty bury your spirit. If you believe in resilience, in justice, in healing, then please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel. Because together, we rise.